Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masech the Sotah daf Hey. We are going to begin on the top of Hamad Aleph, the third line from the top. We're learning certain concepts regarding a Gasas Ruach, someone who is haughty, and the Gemara continues saying, Azharo L'Gasi Ruach Minayin. How do we know that there is a warning in the Torah against such a thing? So Amar Rabba, Amr Z'iri, based on the following pasuk in Yirmiyah. Shimu, listen, v'hazinu, give ear, al tigbahu, do not be haughty. So it's very explicit, it's very clear about gaiba. That you lift up your hearts, and you'll forget Hashem. And it says Hishomer. You have to be careful not to forget Hashem. Rabbi Yabin, Amar Rabbi Lloyd, Yom Rabbi, Amar Rabbi Lloyd, Kol Makom Shneimar Hishomer. Whenever it says the word Hishomer, for that matter, Pen or Bial, Enu Ela B'Loi Saseh. So the Hishomer is considered therefore an Ashara that a person should not be Baal Gaiba, have Gasas Ruach. Darish Rav Avira, Zimnin Amela Mishmid Rav Asi, sometimes said the name Rav Asi, Zimnin Amela Mishmid Rav Ami, Kol Adam Sheish Baruch Gasas Ruach, anyone who has Gasas Haruach has this haughtiness, L'Soif Mismayit. Eventually, his greatness will end up being diminished. Says Rashi, Mismayit Michashivusai, Shnemar Roimu Ma'at, that although you're exalted, you'll become lessened. V'shem Taimer Yeshna Ba'olam, so maybe you'll say that it'll still be in this world, Miskayim, it'll still endure. It won't last. V'im Chayzer B'y Nesa B'zmanai Ka'avram Avina. However, if you do tshuva, then it'll be added time to you, just like my Avram Avinu Shnemar V'humchu, one who lowers himself, says Rashi, V'im Chazer V'nasa Anav, that you're Shemei Mechas Atzmai. If you lower yourself, K'choyel Yekavtsun Ka'avraham Yitzchak V'Yakov, then he will be transferred to be likened to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He'll be like them, Dechsimbahu Ba'kol Mikol Koil. The Imlav, but if he doesn't do this, then we apply the pasuk Ukarayis Shiboiles Yimolu, that the head of the stalks will be basically destroyed. My Ukarayis Shiboiles, Rav Huna Rav Chisda V'chado Omer Sotah de Shibolta. This is referring to, Rashi says, Gabu Shiboiles, like the top of the stalks, that's what it's called. Shikarin's Zakan Hashiboilis, like the oldest part of the stalk. It'll end up, because it's so high, it's going to snap. Chad Aimer Kishiboilis Atzma, like the Shiboilis itself. Dishaman the Emerki Salad the Shibolta, the height Shiboilis. That's why it says like the top of it, because that's why it breaks. Oman the Emerki Shibolta Atzma, it's the stalk itself. My Ukarai Shiboilis, why does it say the top? Compared to a person who goes to his field, he always gathers from the highest parts. So the stalk itself, even though it may not snap off, but it'll be snapped off by the person, because when they harvest, they will cut off from the top. And therefore, if you're on the top, you're going to most likely to fall. The pasuk then says in Yeshaya, as Daka, Ushval Ruach, those who are downtrodden and humble in spirit. Iti Daka. One says, I lift him up to me. V'chad Omer Ani as Daka, I will be lowered to him. So the relationship that Hashem has with the Shval Ruach is that Hashem will lift them up to be the higher status of what Hashem is, or do we say Pofakert, that Hashem will lower himself to their level. Ani as Daka. It makes more sense that Ani as Daka, that Hashem lowers to him. Shari Kodesh Baruch Haniachol Harim Gvois. Hashem left all the big mountains. The Hishra Shchinos Har Sinai, and Hashem came down to Har Sinai. V'gava Har Sinai L'mala. Not that the mountain was lifted up to him. Rabbi Yosef Olim Yomad Adam Midas Kainai. Shari Kodesh Baruch Haniachol Harim Gvois. The Hishra Shchinos Har Sinai. We have to learn from Hashem that just like Hashem did this, Hashem pick the humble mountain of Mount Sinai, so too we should also embrace humility. And Rashi gives examples, Tavor, the Carmel, that all these different mountains, so to speak, came to Hashem to plead that they should have the Torah given on them. Interesting. It's in parentheses over here, but it says that Hashem left all the different trees and it was by the sneh, by this small bush. Such a person, it's fit that they'll be chopped down just like an Asherah, in which the Torah says, Vibatim Eshamam. There's an obligation to actually cut down and destroy a tree of Avodah Zarah. So too, this is a person who is a Baal Gai. V'ksiv hacha v'rami ha'kaima geduim. V'ksiv hasev ashreichem tigadeirun. So the pasuk says that there's this inyan of cutting it down, these trees. That any person who has gasas ruach, the afar will not awaken him. What does that mean? It says Rashi, mekitz b'tchias hamesim, that the person who has gasas ruach is not going to be zoicha to the resurrection of tchias hamesim. Shnemer hakitzu v'rannu shaychni afar. Only those people who are shaychni afar. Shaychni afar lo nemar. No, shaychni afar. Mishasa shachin lo afar. Says Rashi, mashmul atzmul afar. If you are as humble b'chayav in your lifetime as the dust of the earth, that is a person that will be zoich t'chias hamesim. Rabbi Eliezer kol adam sheish bo gasas ruach shchina me'aleles olav. The shchina will woe and lament and cry on this person's behalf. Shnemer v'gavoa, those who are uplifted, memerchak ye'ada. Says Rashi, Reish Dekra, Ki Ram Hashem v'shafal yira v'gavoa yeda shchina. That's referring to the shchina knows about this mitzvah and enes mishaberes alav, and it will cry. Hashem acts differently than people, because midas basav adam gavoya royes hagavoa. The people that are big shots stick to each other. The Hollywood stars, they're gonna only be among each other. The very wealthy will only interact with each other. They're not going to be with the lowly, simple, regular people. They don't even see. Unbelievable language. They don't even see the people below them. It's like they don't even exist. Unbelievable lashon of the Gemara. The way the Rashi says it is l'karv l'shtadlimo. Avol midas hakadosh baruch hu enukein. Hu gavo avroyes hashafel. Hashem is great, but He sees the low. Shnemar ki ram Hashem v'shafel yira. Amar avchis v'item maruk v'kol adam sheish b'gasas ruach. Anyone who has gasas ruach, Amar kadosh baruch hu ein ani v'hu yacholem l'dor b'oilam. The world is too big, is not big enough for the both of us, and therefore anyone who has gasas ruach, it can't be in the same place as him, because he basically doesn't allow God in this world, so to speak, because he's so haughty. So therefore, because of that, Hashem almost is like, I can't be in this world with him. This is question 13 as well as TB 15. So one person again is the gasas ruach. Shnemar, as the pasuk says, Meloshni b'seiser re'ehu oiso atzmis kavoi nayim, that he has again haughtiness and eye, racham leva, of a wide heart. Oso yuchal, someone like that I cannot deal with. Al tikri oso el ito, I can't even be with him. I'm not able to be ito with him. Someone who speaks lashon hara, shnemer miloshni b'seiser re'ehu oiso atzmis. So again, quoting this same language of oso atzmis or ito, the drush is that someone who's a Baal Lashon Hara Hashem can't be in the same world. So you see there's obviously a connection between someone who's haughty and someone who speaks Lashon Hara. Someone who speaks Lashon Hara, they think that they're better than everyone else, and they therefore feel that they can put someone else down, which is what someone who is a gasas ruach is, someone who thinks that they're better than others. Anyone who has haruach, anyone who has haughtiness, they feel ruach kima ocharto. Even a small amount of ruach can mess him up. Shnemar v'rishayim kayom nidrosh. That the wicked will be chased around. My yom sheishbo kama revios, just like when it comes to the water, which has many revios, ruach kima ocharto, even though it has so much water, even a little bit of water can make a little bit of wind rather can make the waters become turbulent and very choppy water. So Adam Sheinbo El Revius, a person who has only a small amount of liquid in their body, or as Rashi says, Revius Dam Mace Matama Oyam Neshu Nefesh. So we see that there's a link of Revius of Dam to being Matama Tumas oil, as we've seen this in Masechtas Nazir. Toward the end, El Revius Al. So we see, usually someone who is a Gasas Ruach really is someone who has very low self-esteem, and therefore they have to constantly be building themselves. They need constant affirmations to be able to validate who they are. But the reality is that even the smallest little thing will destroy them because they really have no self-confidence within themselves, which is why they're in Gasas Ruach. You have to have an eighth of an eighth, like 1/64th of gaiva, just that. It says Rashi. We'll get to that next Rashi. But some explain that Har Sinai was 500 amos, and these other tallest mountains were 32,000 amos, so it's a 1/64 ratio. Because why did Hashem actually give the Torah at Har Sinai? Hashem could have given the Torah directly on the ground. The point is because you have to have some element of pushiness, some element of aggressiveness. 1/64th, which is obviously very small amount. Obviously, also the number of 8. There's a significance of 8, which is Lamal Minateva. 7 is nature. 8 is above nature. So an eighth of an eighth is like above nature. Which is again connected to Torah. Rav Huna v'Redu Rav Yeshua u'ma'atrule kisasa l'shibolta. That he'll adorn him just like, again, as we mentioned, these stalks. So now let's maybe see Rashi. So mishkol katan, a small measure. You have to have a little bit of haughtiness. Shuli kali harosh mistoilin, so that people are not going to mock you. And sometimes you need to be a little bit more assertive so that your words will be more accepted. Okay. Fine. Okay, let's continue. So the Gemara says, Omarava b'shamta de'ispe u'v'shamta de'leispe. What does that mean? It says Rashi, Shamta de'ispe ruach gasas ruach, v'shamta de'leispe gasas porta levishin b'nei iro yureim imenu. So he says you can be in cherem for being a Baal Gaiv and also for having not having gas a little bit. Shein b'nei iro yureim, because no one's going to be afraid of you. The ein bo koyach hoichicham, you're not going to have any ability to rebuke them. So therefore, there has to be some balance. I actually disagree. That it says Rashi, adam it's better to have none at all. Why? Because the pasuk says that's a toeva, as we see, that it's considered to be an abomination to Hashem. So therefore, because of that, we want to distance ourselves so far that maybe not even a drop. The only time a person's tefillah will be accepted is if he makes his heart like flesh. Says Rashi, shurach, it's soft. Lo ke'evin shukashin, not a stone. You have to have a soft heart. Shnemar v'yimidi chodesh b'chad shev'gaymer yavu kol baser l'ishtachavos v'gaymer. Anyone who wants to daven to Hashem, it said their heart should be like baser, which means soft. Amrav zera baser ksibei v'nirpa adam, and it says to heal a man Loksibe v'nirpa. Rabbi Yochanan Adam. What does it mean, the word Adam? Actually, Aleph Daled Mem is an acronym of Afer Dam Mara. That you have this mixture. On one hand, you have dust. You also are of blood, and also Mara. You also are composed of bile. So you have this mixture within a person. Basar is also an acronym. Beis Shin Resh, which is Busha. Literally means embarrassment. Srucha Rima, which is something which is repulsive, and that which is worms. So what does that mean? So Rashi says, okay. So when it says that, maybe it's referring to Sha'ol, Makom Sha'ol Beso, the place of his house, Dichsev Bashin. So again, if it's Basar, it shouldn't be Sarucha, which is the Samach, it should be with a Shin. Okay. Amar Abashi, Kol Adam Sheish Bugasas Ruach, Seifai L'Seif Nivchas. Shnemer. Anyone who's Gasas Ruach, eventually Nivchas Rashi is mismayit bechashibuso, like we said, that his chashivas will be diminished. V'nasa pochas b'anashim, he'll be considered lowly. Shnemer, as we continue on Hamid Beis, because the pasuk says v'lasis v'lasapachas. Vein seis el loshin gavoya. Now this is actually referring to Saras, but the word seis also represents haughtiness. Shnemer v'alkol haharim haramim, on all the exalted mountains, v'alkol hagavois hanisois, and all the high locations. When we say sapachas, it's tefela. Says Rashi, tafel is never sheinu choshev. It's not the ikr, it's the tafel. It's like a secondary. Something that's not as important. El nitfol b'acherim. There's something which is dependent on others. Shnemar sefacheni na el achas hakuhunois lechel pas lechem. So in Shmuel, in Sefer Shmuel, it was said, please attach me to one of these kohanim so I'll be able to eat a morsel of bread. How great it is, humility in front of Hashem. As long as the base of Mikdash stood. You can be marked an elevation offering and sachar oila biyadai, and you get the reward of the bringing of this carbon, of that particular carbon, but of course not a different carbon. Mincha schar mincha biyada, you get the schar of that reward for that carbon. Of lamisha daito shafala, if you're humble, malav akasav ki'ilu hikrib kol karbanos kulam. It's not just if you bring an ola, you get the credit for an ola. It's like you get the credit because you're a shafal ruach, you get the credit for everything. Shenemar zivche elokim ruach nishbara. So it obviously shows the element of the karbanos, the purpose of the karbanos, is to recognize godliness in the world and also to humble yourself in the presence of God. If a person is able to do that, that's one of the obvious reasons why we have karbanos. Your tefillah is not going to be unaccepted. Anyone who, again, is humble, his tefillah will not be mavaz, it won't be like despicable. Anyone who evaluates his ways in this world, says Rashi, like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, you weigh out the losses opposite your gains. You'll see the salvation. If a person goes upon the road, he'll have salvation from Hashem. Now, that again basically means that he plans out the road. He understands all the different nuance of doing the right thing versus the wrong thing, and the rewards and the losses. So our Mishnah said that one of the things that, in order for a woman to become a sotah, it's necessary that the husband has to warn her. So hagufa kasha amrid omer lo befnei shnayim. If he said in front of two witnesses, and the question is, does he have to do it in front of two? It's a machlokas. Al tedabri im ish plon. Don't speak with this particular man. Al mediber stirahu. It sounds like her just speaking alone constitutes enough to be able to have violated, and therefore that's considered like she was secluded. The Hadar Tani Dibra Imo, speak with him, Adain Muteris Lebesa. She's mutter. Umateris Le'echel B'truma. So Alma Dibra Lo Klumhu. What is the whole notion of Dibor? Is it something? Is it constitute enough of a warning that it's also therefore steer is a problem, or do we say it's nothing? So Rabbi Hakikamer Al Tadabri. If he uses the language of Al Tadabri, do not speak, V'dibra, and she spoke, Al Tadabri, or he said, do not speak, V'nistor, and she secluded herself, V'lo Klum, it says. Al Tisatsri, do not seclude yourself, V'dabri Imo, and she spoke with him, Adain Muteris Leveso, Muteris Le'echel B'truma. In other words, the way that I understand this is that using this language is not enough. You have to say Altisteri, and in addition to that, you have to say Altisteri. In addition to that, Altadabri is not enough, but you also, it has to not just that she spoke to him afterwards, she actually has to seclude herself afterwards in order to possibly go to drink Sotah, the Mei Sotah. But Dibru Imo Adain Mutesa Beisa Mutesa Chabatruma. Nichnasi Imo Labesa Seiser, if she goes into the house in private, for Shahasa Kadei Tuman, she's there for, as we discussed it, Kadei Hora, this small amount of time. Question 14. Im washin kinuhu be'altistri or afilu be'altidabri. The answer is it has to be be'altistri. V'meis chayuletzes amai. So he said that in the event that her husband dies, so the din is that she, in the event that her husband dies, the end of this Mishnah, chayuletzes fil misyavemes. The brother will have to do chalitza, but yibum is not performed. So she cannot marry and do yibum if, again, she's in this state. So the question is, why not? So the Gemara says as follows. Amai tisyavim nami yavumi. Why don't we just allow her to do yibum as well? So Rav Yosef Amar Krav yotzim bebeso v'halcha v'haislish acher. The pasuk says that she will leave his house and she'll go to another man. It's focusing on the word acher, a totally different guy. Lish acher v'lo yavam. So it's referring to an ish acher, that she can go to another person, but not to the yavam. So this pasuk is coming to exclude, because right before it, Rashi says ki motza ba ervas davar. So because it was an ervas davar, therefore yotzim bebeso. So why says Rashi Ishachar Lamali Lamechtav Ilishri Letsuva Alide Get Krisa Slichtav Yatsme Beso Yatzel Ish Lamali. We know that once she gets a get, she can marry someone else. So it's El Muti Avama. That's true. If there was an Ermas Davar, again in this situation because she is suspect, so therefore the din is that then her husband dies, so she could marry someone else to an ishacher, but she's not going to go to the yavam. So if the pasuk is excluding the brother explicitly from the word lish acher below yavam, then chalitza should also not be required. Says Rashi over here, below yavam shein acher eitzel nesuin shalzu shemekayach nesui rishon he niskakaslo. He's not considered to be an acher. He's not like an outsider. Okay. If she was still married, Milo boy get. So we would definitely say that she would need to give a get if they were married. So Hashanamite boy chalitza. That's why chalitza is required. So let's say he didn't die, but instead she wanted to marry someone else, so she would need a get first. So too you need chalitza. Says the pasuk says this to another person. The lo listere lebese. She shouldn't destroy her house. V'at amrit tisyavim nami yabume. And you should say that yibum should take place. Certainly not. So yibum doesn't have to be done. So then maybe she shouldn't be able to marry anyone else, because since she basically destroyed her house, so then she shouldn't be able to marry someone else either. So Amalei, as we continue Baba Aleph, Mika Raminan La Ale Balkarche, are we imposing her upon this man against her will. Okay, let's finish to the Mishnah. The pasuk says the word acher, she'ein ben zugo shel rishain, that it's someone who is of a different character. The first husband let this evilness leave from his house. And the second man brings this woman into his house. So why would we require yibum? Let's say, therefore, if she married a second guy that didn't have children, so maybe for that same reason, she shouldn't have to do yibum again. If, let's say, again, she made a mistake, but then she got remarried, so maybe we should say that if now her new husband dies, that she shouldn't do yibum. So gabe dahai miha b'shem toiv havi kaima. So she perhaps did tshuva, and therefore we shouldn't necessarily just assume just because she was bad in the first relationship means that's how it's going to be also in this one. If we see that when she is married to her husband, she's usher to her husband's brother. So, but also shekain, and she's usher to the man. So, so the yavama lokol shekain, she should certainly be usher too. Says Rashi. Why no yibum? Because if she becomes usher to her husband when she is secluded, she was mutter to her husband before this kalkulu, and then because of her wrongdoings, now she's usher to her husband. So her husband's brother, who is usher to her while they're married, her husband's alive. Obviously, no, you can't marry his brother. Basically, the whole reason why yibum works is because it's linked to the husband. But if she's now usher to her husband, then she's certainly going to be usher to the yavam as well. TA 15. Maha Makar Shesaita Enu Misyavemes. Rav Yosef or Rabbi. Okay, we didn't finish this, but let's see. So this is 15. Either O Mevoyetze Mebesa B'Halcha V'Haiselish Acher, because it says the word Acher. O Kavachayim B'Mutul Aneser B'Osel Ol Kol Shekin, which we just saw. Okay. Weiter. Amle Abaya El Miyata Kohen Gadol Shekidish Es Almana. If you have a Kohen Gadol who marries an Almana, which not supposed to do, umeis, and then the Kohen Gadol dies, v'yeshlo ach Kohen Hedget. However, the brother is a Kohen Hedget who is allowed to marry an almana. Lo tisyave, maybe he shouldn't be able to do yibum, because im nesra b'mutawa, because she was really not allowed to be with her husband, who was the Kohen Gadol. So since she was also really to her husband, the Kohen Gadol, so ba'asuri lo l'kol shekain, then she should not be allowed to be with the brother, who is a Kohen Hedget. But Nesra ha'asir v'kaima. So therefore that's the question. So of course it says, well, l'chayra, we should therefore say that he should not be able to marry her and do yibum. But why not? Because he's a Kohen Hedget, he should be allowed to. Just because his brother, who's a Kohen Gadol, shouldn't have married her, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the Kohen Hedget. So where it says Nesra would become aser ha'asir v'kaima. It's not the same thing when it came to the case of a Sotah, because the case of a Sotah, she was mutter and she became us to her husband. This woman is really always us to her husband because a Kohen Gadol is not supposed to be with an almana. So mutter wa asula who? El Eishes Kohen. So he says a little differently. If you have a wife of a Kohen, Chenensa. We know that, so originally she was mutter to her husband, but since she was raped, so the din is that she is now usher to her husband because she's because of a Kohen. Obviously, that's not by Israel. Umeis, and then man dies, v'yeshul achol. but he has a brother who's a chol, so maybe you shouldn't do yibum, but a chol is allowed to be with this woman. So im nesra b'mutterla ba'asal kol, but we know this chol is permitted to do yibum with his brother's wife. So oines be Yisrael mishra shari. Then oines with Yisrael is completely mutter. Gabi the high mioleka isura. Over here, there's absolutely no isur. So therefore, says Rashi ve'etzulhu heter gomer ve'ein zekal v'chaymer. Okay, so this is, you can't really say that that's an issue because you can't use this as a kal v'chaymer because in this situation we know a chol is allowed to do so. Okay. Let's see if there's any more questions. Adkan.